Let's talk about water flow in the aquarium. It sounds like a simple topic, and most people assume they already understand it. Current should exist in a tank. Sure, but what kind and why tends to raise a surprising number of questions. The reason is simple. A lot of hobbyists never actually grasp what current is for in the first place, and once that gap exists, everything connected to it starts feeling confusing. This breaks down exactly what current does and why, and once that clicks, the rest of the questions tend to answer themselves. Before diving in, it helps to nail down the definition. Water flow, in the simplest sense, is any movement of water within a body of water, natural or artificial, that meaningfully affects the physical and chemical processes happening inside it. That movement can come from physical properties, like a temperature difference between layers, or from external forces, water flowing in from another source, air escaping from lower layers, or water being pushed in under pressure. So, why does any body of water, including an aquarium, need current at all? Some hobbyists will say it's about recreating a natural environment, giving fish something to swim against and exercise their muscles, or just for the fun of it. That's a legitimate goal for species that genuinely enjoy current. But the real unglamorous reason for current in an aquarium comes down to filtration. Filtration and current are two halves of the same process. Remove the current, and filtration stops functioning exactly as it works in any natural body of water, and exactly how every filter is built to operate. The clearest example of what happens to a body of water without current is a swamp. No current, no life for fish, no submerged plant growth, only emergent growth above the waterline eventually survives. Here's why that happens. As covered in other discussions about filtration, bacteria, and the nitrogen cycle, the aquarium is dominated by aerobic bacteria, bacteria that need oxygen, and food to survive. But oxygen comes first. Without it, they can't function at all. No oxygen means no nitrogen cycle, no breakdown of organic waste, no matter how much of that waste, essentially bacterial food, is sitting there. Once the nitrogen cycle slows or stops, organic matter stops breaking down, carbon dioxide builds up, the water starts souring, waste accumulates, and the whole system becomes toxic, unlivable for both the animals and the plants. That's how any body of water eventually turns into a swamp. A bit of physics helps explain this. Warm gas or warm water is always lighter than cold and rises naturally. That's basic and easy to demonstrate. Anyone who's swum in a lake or the ocean has felt that warm surface layer sitting right above ice cold water, just half a meter down. That warm surface layer never spontaneously sinks and mixes with the colder layer below. And the same principle applies to air. So the colder bottom layer becomes isolated from the oxygen rich layer above, and each layer effectively lives its own separate life. Oxygen and activity up top, cold and stagnation below. Over time, that oxygen shortage and carbon dioxide surplus spread through the whole body of water. The substrate in water starts souring, and the system becomes unlivable in its submerged form, turning into a swamp. In nature, other forces usually step in to mix those layers: streams and rivers feeding in, wind and waves, springs bubbling up from below. That constant mixing is exactly what current provides. Now, picture an aquarium with no filter and no air pump, just water, no live plants, and a light fixture mounted above, possibly under a hood. That light heats the top layer of water, creating two distinct temperature zones. The upper layer stays warm and gets at least some oxygen from direct contact with air, while the lower layer stays cold and oxygen starved, since there's no way for air to reach it without mixing. Most of the bacteria in an aquarium live in and on the substrate, right where oxygen is scarcest, where waste accumulates the most, and where bacteria need that oxygen most for their own survival and for breaking down organic matter as part of the nitrogen cycle. As bacteria consume oxygen and break down waste, they release carbon dioxide, so the oxygen shortage at the bottom gets compounded by a carbon dioxide surplus. That combination drives up carbonic acid, humic acid, and other acids in the water, souring both the water and the substrate. Fish end up crowding near the surface, gulping at the air water interface just to breathe. That's how everything living in the tank eventually dies. Non decomposing waste piles up on the bottom, and disease causing bacteria and algae take hold. That's the no current scenario laid out plainly. In a planted tank with good lighting and solid water parameters, active daytime photosynthesis does release oxygen that dissolves even into the lower layers. And rising oxygen bubbles drag some water movement along with them, creating a minimal current. But at night, the opposite happens. Plants join the bacteria and fish in consuming oxygen instead of producing it, which makes the problem worse, especially in deep, large volume tanks. Carbon dioxide dissolves in water about 35 times more readily than oxygen, and its concentration in water can run up to 70 times higher than in air. Oxygen concentration in a planted tank swings significantly over a 24-hour cycle. At an average water temperature of 23 to 25 degrees Celsius slash 73 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit, oxygen saturation sits around 8 milligrams per liter. In heavily planted tanks with strong photosynthesis, evening oxygen levels can reach 10 milligrams per liter. Overnight, that concentration can drop to 4 to 5 milligrams per liter, even with aeration running, and that's under average conditions. Any drop down to 2 milligrams per liter will reliably kill off a significant portion of both bacteria and fish. Now, stack on a few more factors. Low pH and low carbonate hardness, which slow the nitrogen cycle, plus overstocking, both of which drive carbon dioxide concentration even higher on top of an already oxygen poor tank. That combination reliably triggers ammonia and nitrite spikes and sharp swings in acidity, neither of which fish or plants tolerate well. Higher water temperature also reduces how much oxygen the water can hold. So, all else being equal, fish struggle to breathe far more at 30 degrees Celsius slash 86 degrees Fahrenheit than at 22 degrees Celsius slash 72 degrees Fahrenheit, simply because oxygen concentration drops as temperature rises. Combine high acidity, high temperature, and a deep, large tank with no current, and the outcome in those bottom layers, and eventually the whole tank, gets genuinely bad. Preventing all of that means mixing every layer of water in the tank and driving oxygen down to the substrate and into every corner, especially around decorations, and that's exactly what current does. Someone might point to an air pump and its stream of rising bubbles as current enough, fair for a small square or round tank, but in a long rectangular tank, a meter or more in length, how exactly do bubbles rising in one corner deliver oxygen to the entire footprint of the substrate on the far side? That's the gap air alone can't close. A filter works the same way any filter does. It has filter media, and in an aquarium, that media is largely the substrate itself, and water carrying oxygen needs to be actively pushed through or toward it, eliminating dead zones anywhere in the tank. How strong that current needs to be depends entirely on external factors, primarily stocking level and feeding volume. The logic follows directly. More livestock means more waste and more oxygen demand for both the animals and the bacteria, which means stronger filtration and stronger current are needed. The stronger the current, the more oxygen reaches the substrate, the more active the bacteria living there become, the faster organic waste breaks down, and the faster the nitrogen cycle runs. It's a straightforward chain of cause and effect. As for fish that supposedly need current for their own sake, that's more a matter of personal taste than necessity. Similar to dressing up a pet, nothing wrong with it if that's the goal. Wanting fish to swim actively against a strong flow, or plants waving like a flag in the wind, is a perfectly fine aesthetic choice. But current strength itself should be tied to the practical side of filtration. Based on plenty of hands-on experience, the best balance of cost, power, and maintenance effort comes from a filter rated around 5 times the tank's water volume per hour. That keeps filtration effective for a good stretch of time, and factoring in gradual flow reduction from clogging and the inflated flow ratings most manufacturers publish, it usually allows a week or two between cleanings for an internal filter and around 6 months for an external filter, assuming it's loaded with media correctly. That kind of output is generally enough to create proper current without overdoing it or blasting substrate and decorations apart. Choosing a more powerful filter than strictly necessary isn't a problem either. Flow can simply be throttled down with a valve or redirected by angling the outflow against the glass. The more excess flow there is, the sharper that angle against the glass should be. A flow hitting the glass at a full 90 degrees breaks apart and disperses evenly in every direction, while a shallow angle, say 10 degrees, barely slows the flow at all and instead pushes it along the glass, setting up a circular current around the tank. As for how to actually set up current, the honest answer is however works for a given tank. It depends on the filter, the intake and outflow placement, and the tank's length and width. Experimenting is fine. What actually matters isn't the exact angle or direction, it's whether dead zones exist anywhere in the tank, whether plants sway naturally, and whether fish are getting pinned against the glass or exhausting themselves fighting the flow around the clock. One persistent myth deserves a direct correction: the idea that strong current automatically causes algae. That's simply false. It's the absence of current that leads to algae. Algae growth comes down to entirely different factors. All personal tanks run what could fairly be called aggressive current. The largest one, a 260-liter setup, runs two filters rated at a combined 4,000 liters per hour, close to 20 times the tank's water volume every hour, and these tanks have gone years without a single water change. And there's no algae to speak of. Over years of running tanks that way, the occasional spot of green dust algae shows up now and then, usually tied to a phosphate dip or a lighting issue. And that's it, easily corrected once spotted, usually first noticeable on the front glass where the strongest jet from the internal pump filter hits directly, and which serves as an early warning to test the water and address the root cause. There's no debris sitting on the substrate in any of these tanks. The water stays completely clear with no suspended particles, and the substrate rarely needs vacuuming, thanks largely to the plants and the overall setup. Substrate silting is directly tied to filtration and current strength. The stronger the filtration and current, the more debris gets pulled into the filter instead of settling on the substrate, and that debris gets removed from the system entirely through filter cleaning. Weaker current and filtration mean more debris settles directly onto the substrate and eventually turns into silt, requiring more frequent substrate cleaning. So the logic holds either way. Weak current and filtration call for more frequent substrate vacuuming, strong current and filtration shift that maintenance burden onto the filter instead. Here's how current is actually set up across a few different tanks. The 260-liter tank, holding roughly 220 liters of water, runs an external filter rated at 1,200 liters per hour and an internal pump filter rated at 2,800 liters per hour, a combined rated 4,000 liters per hour, though real-world output typically lands closer to 2,500 to 3,000 liters per hour, once accounting for manufacturer overstatement, which suits the stocking level well. This tank runs a classic circular current. The internal pump filter fires at a strong angle into the front glass, loses some force on impact, and pushes water along the front glass toward the opposite side glass, then back along the rear glass. On the opposite side glass, the external filter's outflow is angled toward the rear glass, losing force the same way and pushing water along the rear glass back toward the internal filter and the external filter's intake. The original spray bar attachments got removed early on since they tend to scatter floating plants and clog easily, weakening flow over time, and floating plants are a fixture in every one of these tanks. This tank, along with a separate 100-liter setup, also runs an air stone on a half-meter diffuser line along the substrate near the back glass, and the rising bubble stream drags water up along that back wall, preventing debris buildup under the plants there, with that upward flow then getting pulled into the external filter's current. The external filter's outflow also creates noticeable surface ripple, which further improves aeration. That's how the plants have been swaying in that current for years. And as for algae on the substrate or plants, there simply isn't any to see. The water clarity holds up the same way in a tank running on a soil substrate, reset up about a month and a half ago with more than 40 liters of soil in it, no suspended particles at all. The external filter there got its first cleaning in nearly a year and a half, just last week, while the internal filter gets cleaned roughly every 3 weeks to a month. The 100-liter soil substrate tank has been running over a year without water changes. Until a week ago, it ran a cheap external filter rated at 400 liters per hour that, even brand new, never actually delivered more than about 200. And it finally gave out after a year of service. Back when it was still running, noticing the weak, essentially non-existent current, an internal filter rated at 320 liters per hour got added alongside it. Once the failing external unit died, it got replaced with a 700 liter per hour internal filter in its place. That filter now pushes current diagonally from the back right corner toward the front left corner. The flow is fairly strong ahead of the filter, but weaker immediately around the filter itself, which has become a favorite hangout spot for fry. Shrimp crawl through the current the same as they always have, completely unbothered by it, and fish aren't affected either. The internal filter typically got cleaned every couple of weeks, and without the external unit running alongside it now, that'll likely need to happen weekly or every other week. The 70-liter tank with tiger barbs, holding around 60 liters of water, and running without water changes for close to 4 years now, has always relied on a single internal filter rated at 500 liters per hour, creating the same kind of circular current, and gets cleaned about once a month, sometimes slightly more often. To sum it up, pick any filter that fits the budget rated around 5 times the tank's water volume per hour, ideally more, and filtration and current stop being a problem. If that current can move water along the substrate while also creating surface ripple, that's a bonus for aeration. Check for dead zones, spots with no current. They're usually easy to spot since debris collects there consistently. Plants don't need to be swaying dramatically, and fish don't need to be fighting the current constantly, though a reasonable amount of that is a genuine positive. In tanks with especially strong current, it helps to leave calmer pockets where fish can rest without fighting the flow the whole time. There's no fish species that fares worse in a current driven tank, especially a planted one. It really is that straightforward once the underlying logic makes sense. Approach every question in this hobby with that same logic and think about how nature handles the same problem. And if something here sounds worth trying, don't copy it blindly, not from this video and not from anyone else. Research it thoroughly and work through the reasoning independently first. If any of this was useful, questions and thoughts are always welcome in the comments below, and subscribing helps this kind of content reach more people getting into the hobby.